Sullivan on Talk Radio.
Welcome back. We are now going to talk about migrants. As I said just before the break, it turns out we're spending £4.7 million every single day housing asylum seekers, people who come mainly across the Channel in hotels. £4.7 million every day, nearly £5 million every single day, 7 days a week. It's astonishing, isn't it? This from a government who said it was going to tackle the problem, send in the Navy, we'll get to grips with it. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has been saying that now for 2 years. And it just keeps on getting worse. Let's talk to political commentator from the Young Voices UK organisation, Portia Berry-Kilby. Good evening, Portia.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm very well. This just gets worse and worse and worse, this migrant problem, doesn't it? I mean, this month, January, or last month, January, when usually very, very few migrants come across because the weather's not good, that more than 1,300 came across. This time last year, 223, I think it was. So it's 6 times up on this time last year. If we carry on at this rate, 180,000 migrants will arrive here and our daily hotel bill will rocket. But already it's what you might call a national scandal. That's taxpayers shelling out £5 million every day to accommodate people who come over here in dinghies and frankly land here illegally. I know they say, well, they're not illegal until you can establish that they're not actually legitimate asylum seekers, but they pretty much are, if you ask me. They arrive here, they got no documents, they come over by an illegitimate method on dinghies, and then of course we put them into hotels and we pay them some money. But £5 million every day, we've got to do something about this, haven't we?
Well, absolutely. I think £5 million on hotels which are meant to be incredibly poor quality and bad food is pretty abysmal from a Conservative government which should have full financial sense. It's kind of an outrage that they're spending approximately £127 per person per night. I've never spent that much on a hotel in my life for a night.
Well, I must admit I have, but quite a few more quid than that. But yes, it's a great deal of money to be spending on these people. I mean, of course, once they get here, we're sort of lumbered with them. But our approach to it seems to be to make this country very, very welcoming to them. And, I don't want to be unkind. And most of them, or all of them, are just looking for a better life. But we can't just let people come in because they're looking for a better life. When we voted for Brexit, the idea was to seal our sovereign borders. These people make a mockery of that. And don't you think that instead of putting them into hotels, we ought to put them into sort of detention centres and charge them with possibly breaking our laws, because they are.
I think there should definitely be a more sensible way of housing them, and be that detention centre, hotel, there has to be a bed, food and water of any way, shape or form. You can do it sufficiently comfortably for a lot less than £127. And of course, the numbers of people crossing the Channel is one thing, but it's another just extra ridiculous thing from the government to then spend so much on it. They could halve the cost that per person and spend the rest of the money processing documents far faster and dealing with those who are here illegally and aren't legitimate claims.
Or even better, Portia, turn them around in the middle of the Channel and return them to France.
Or not let them get into the dinghies in the first place.
Exactly, but we won't get any help from the French on that. Macron, was it yesterday, accusing the British of being hypocrites and accusing us of being responsible for every single death that happens during these often dangerous crossings. You remember last November, I think it was 29 poor souls drowned trying to get across the Channel. So it's a lethal journey often, and Macron said it's all our fault. Well, he's the one that let them out of the country. He's the one that let them get down to the beach, get into the dinghy and leave France. We know what's going on. France, France likes the idea of these people leaving their country and coming here. They do nothing to stop them. It is pointless us saying to Macron, please do more to stop this, because he never will.
Well, entirely. And I mean, it's probably what we should expect for France. It's not terribly surprising. They have quite the history of failures. But that aside, once they're here, it's not France's problem. And it would be quite unusual to process them offshore, as some people rumour would be a solution. It would go against the UN Convention, which of course the UK could leave, but it wouldn't really ingratiate Boris or the Conservatives with certain voters. So at the moment, France should be very happy every time they see someone hop in a dinghy, which is in and of itself a catastrophe, given that so much of that is facilitated by human traffickers, and it's a very nefarious business.
Indeed. I want to caveat this next question by saying I don't think it'll make any difference anyway. But not so long ago, didn't I hear both Boris Johnson and Priti Patel boldly declaring that to tackle this daily invasion that we suffer from these migrants in dinghies, they were going to send in the Navy. Now, I don't think that would make any difference because the Navy would do the same as what the RNLI do with their lifeboats and what the Border Patrol boats do. They would just pick the migrants up and bring them to Britain. But that said, where is the Navy? I mean, did they just say this? They're not going to do it?
Well, I think it very much is saying it and not doing it, because even if they then did it, what if you were in the Navy? What are you going to do? If you see someone drowning at sea, you're going to obviously help them. I think human compassion, just human instinct, is to help other humans suffering. So it seems very much like you're saying the right things and ticking the box of taking back control of the borders, but in reality, little change would come from it.
Yes, well, of course, the Border Patrol have said, the Border Force patrols down there have said that they have no intention of returning the dinghies to France because it's a question of life or death. I'm not quite sure whether that's true, but I suppose we have to accept that. So if they pick up any migrants, they put them onto their boats and they bring them into Folkestone or Dover, whereupon we pick them up in coaches and take them to hotels. And when you said about some of the hotels are perhaps rather more luxurious than they should be. There was one, I think it was last year, it might have been the year before, but it did make me laugh. One of the hotels being used had a golf course and spa, so the migrants could work on their handicaps. You know, I mean, it's unbelievable. But the point is that the Navy said that the Royal National Lifeboat Institute have said that they will certainly not turn back migrants. They will put them on board and bring them into the beach. You've seen them. You've seen the RNLI boats landing on beaches. You've seen the border patrols going into harbours, you know, with literally, you know, their decks just covered in migrants waiting to go ashore. And the Navy said that if they do get called in, I suppose they have to obey orders. They said that they'll do exactly the same. So you wonder how we ever are going to get to grips with this system, insofar as what the people smugglers tell the migrants is once you get onto that boat, you're home and dry, because the British will taxi service you into their shores.
Yeah, and then if it takes 2-3 months or even longer to process paperwork, then you are at least guaranteed somewhere warm and hospitable, at least for a time. So there is incentive to come. And obviously, the government aren't heartless. It can't be entirely hostile to people who do make it across, but there needs to be faster processing. You don't need to be keeping someone in a hotel at such a cost for so long, and trying to forge something with France to crack down on the other side.
Why can't we tell these people what the Australians did to their illegal migrants? If you try to get into this country on a dinghy, arriving with no documents, you know, if you come in by this illegitimate method, you can apply for asylum, but automatically it will be refused because of the method you use to get into the country, because you can apply for asylum over in France. And don't forget, these people all say that they are escaping from torture and war. Last time I looked, there's not much war or torture in France. So there's something inherently absurd about them. And the elephant in the hotel room, if I can put it that way, Portia, is that when these migrants, when we do put them into these rather nice hotels, many of them just walk out. They just leave because they're not detained. People don't realise this. So they arrive ostensibly illegally. We put them in hotels and they just leave. That process strikes me as insane.
Well, absolutely. There's more holes in it than a net curtain. And a lot could be learned from Australia. They are governed by different rules as the US are, so they have a bit more autonomy. But yeah, there are clearly glaring errors, and having gone through Brexit on the promise of taking back control, this should be a clear focus for the government to improve the policy.
And I think this year ahead, as the weather gets more clement and more come across, don't forget at some points last year we had 1,200 in a single day, 1,200 in a single day. People are estimating, I mean, as I said, if you extrapolate from the 1,300 that came over, just over 1,300 that came over in January, if you extrapolate that over 12 months, that comes to about, that should add up to about 180,000. Others are talking about hundreds of thousands. This is an escalating problem that the government really, at long last, actually really needs to get a grip of, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, I think we should both be going into a hotel business and making a pretty penny.
It's a deal. Let's do that. Portia, great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Portia Berry-Kilby, a political commentator. She's a member of Young Voices UK.